It's easy to overlook the importance of well-designed streets. We shouldn't be doing that. A great street is the ultimate work of architecture. Many architects and planners tend to compartmentalize building design, traffic, utilities, public safety, and planning issues separately without understanding the whole. The author Alan B. Jacobs, in his book Great Streets, takes a different viewpoint. He makes the following comment.
In the building and rebuilding of cities, there seem to have been relatively few times when the major concentration of design efforts has been on the streets. Not on the citywide pattern of the streets or the laying out of whole areas, but on the functional, sensual arrangement of the streets themselves, their sizes, the detailed design of all their parts, and their embellishments in the context of their particular city.
The significance of the street is a fundamental element of urban design, and as such cannot be underestimated. As an architect, I confess that I come from a group that could be considered to have some disdain for the street. It's there for practical purposes, but sometimes its constraints seem to impinge on what I'm trying to do with my project. For what is going on a block or two away from my site seems to have little to do with my endeavor. But after years of observation and study, I've come to realize that a street is more than just a collection of buildings and other things. It's actually a work of architecture in and of itself. When we fail to recognize the whole of this notion and make all the pieces work as a whole, we end up with bad streets. Bad streets are those where some or all the functions assigned to the street don't work together, resulting in an environment that is unlovable, poorly functioning, or even dangerous. These streets are not conducive to civic life, and people on these streets are suspicious of each other. Even if it happens incidentally, they're no place for commerce. They're ugly, and people want to get through them as quickly and leave as soon as possible. Firmitas, utilitas, and venustas. Commodity, firmness, and delight. A bad street lacks some or all of these Vitruvian principles. A bad street does not suit the needs and aspirations of the people who use it. And a city full of bad streets is a bad city, despite all the individual things that are good things for a city to have. More recently, I've wanted my own projects to contribute to the street, to the neighborhood, and to the city as a whole. To my disappointment, sometimes these projects made very little contribution. Over time, I recognize this as a great frustration for me. Many times we have constructed buildings only to see them brought down by their surroundings, or conversely, our work has been insufficient to lift up the surroundings. Over time, I had to acknowledge the importance of the street and the things that streets do. The world outside of our building had to be taken into account. Streets are functional and necessary, but mostly only taken into account for practical reasons, with the larger design dialogue forgotten by many designers, including sometimes me. Every new or reworked building has the power to lift up. Not just the individual work of architecture that I'm working on, but especially the greater whole of the environment that it will exist in. These things force my design process to take into account a larger context. Wittingly or not, my design was, by necessity, part of a greater endeavor. So I'd like to illustrate a few things that I incorporate into what I do to acknowledge this larger context. Let me get out my iPad. So here are a few things to consider in designing to contribute to the architecture of the street. Let's assume a few things for this exercise. Let's have the buildings cozying up to each other to provide a more or less continuous wall. Let's have mixed use, residential over commercial program. And we'll assume that we have a generous space between our building and the street for transition. Please note that your size may vary. Our design must address the transition between the building face and the street sidewalk and provide elements that express this change. We want the building to be welcoming to the street with a clear and inviting entries and openings, while also discouraging those who don't belong. So this means avoiding blank walls or dark, scary openings. At the same time, we want to be able to look out from the building with discretion and see interesting things, as well as to understand the weather. We're confident the street will give back to us. So we're contributing to the block-facing wall of the street, that surface that constitutes the face of our outdoor room. As such, what we do is substantial and of high quality. So our surfaces, how we express openings, details, and massing, need to be delicate and sensitive, rather than being overbearing and contrarian. Our objective is to make our design clear and interesting. We aim to beautify our surroundings by hiding or eliminating ugliness, such as electrical transformers or fire sprinkler valves or anything like that. We'll want to contribute to the beauty, procession, and comfort of walking. And finally, we'll want to encourage the use of common infrastructure to promote economy, sustainability, and beauty. Examples of good streets can be found all around the world. The Great Streets book describes numerous examples that we can learn from, examples that are vibrant urban spaces and are works of architecture in the best sense, inspiration to strive to create our own great streets. Here's a couple that come to my mind. These places that are enjoyed and actively used by the people who live in them and beloved by folks who visit them. This is coming from an architect's point of view, so naturally I need to show you some examples of special buildings that are great on their own, but they're also aware of their surroundings. They provide transition, building design, and contribution to the street that we're looking for. The Lever House elegantly and effortlessly builds out the city block, yet brings in its visitors. Guggenheim Bilbao provides a jewel-like counterpoint to the old city fabric. The Poetry Museum's entry sequence takes someone from the noisy city to a state of contemplation. Belle Nord Apartments' central courtyard is spectacular in its scale. La Pededra is outstanding in so many ways, but its entry through this courtyard is thrilling. As a contributor to urban design, my goal is to create not just individual projects, but great streets that enrich the lives of those who use them. I don't think of the special streets of the world as places with an exclusive design language that just makes them tourist attractions. Rather, they're works of architecture to inspire design of any street, grand or intimate. If we look around the world surveying great cities, one of the things that gives us immeasurable pleasure are streets that awe and inspire us. As an architect, I can't separate myself from that. The work I do is completely tied in with the reality of however good or bad the street is. So every project I design is meant to play its part. A portion of what could be a great street. Maybe somebody's favorite street.